Disney lies. As I'm sure most of you have seen fairy tales that have been filmed by Disney, many of them are not from the original. They are very, very changed and they're very different. For example, the ones that were written by the Brothers Grimm, Cinderella to be in fact is the one I'm talking about tonight, was changed quite a bit to fit modern standards and stuff. So, for a second I'm going to tell you about the Brothers Grimm. They were two brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, and they were from Germany in the early 19th century, and they wrote they weren't really children's literature then, but they wrote literature and they wrote fairy tales that later will be transformed into some of the fairy tales that we know today. And so, they did a lot of other things other than fairy tales, but this is what they're best known for. So you see the original Cinderella here not the original, you see the new Cinderella that's by Disney. And then this is a painting made to show what the Brothers Grimm Cinderella represented. As you can see, there are a lot of differences, and we're going to go through those differences. So you see here that she's, blonde hair, blue eyes, real thin, she's really pretty. As to fit the society standards for, a pretty person. And this next one, she's a little bit, bigger looking. She has brown hair. Pretty sure she has brown eyes in the original one. So they've definitely changed her a lot to fit, beauty standards at that time. And they put a lot of magical little talking creatures in here. There are some in the original, but not nearly as many as there are in the Disney version because it was changed to suit. So with the original version, Cinderella's mother dies, and her father gets remarried, and then her father dies. Well, in the original, written by the Brothers Grimm, her father doesn't die. Her father is watching all of the horrible things that the stepmother puts her through and has her endure. So that's a big difference because nobody wants to watch a movie about somebody's dad who's letting their stepmother ruin their life. And so, that's one of the major differences that Disney put in there. One of the next differences is that there's no fairy godmother, first off. That did not happen. There was no fairy godmother. When her mother died, she was buried near a tree. And Cinderella would go to that tree every day, and she would cry. And the birds would bring her things that she needed, such as, extra food, and they'd bring her clothes, and they'd bring her all of these things that she needed. So, the fairy godmother, Disney just kind of made up to make it look pretty. There was no pumpkin. There was no mouse being turned into a horse. That didn't happen. But the ball did happen, as you can see that they are dancing in the original one here. But the difference is, the ball lasted 3 nights in the original. Cinderella would go to the tree and she'd cry, and then birds would bring her down a dress, and each night the dress got more and more beautiful. So the first night she goes underneath the tree, after her stepmother told her no, twice. She told her, if you clean up these, little things I'm going to put on the floor, you can go. She has the birds help her clean up little things on the floor, and her stepmother told her, no, if you can do twice the amount of work, then you can go. She does twice the amount of work in the same amount of time, and her stepmother tells her, no, you're dirty and you don't have any clothes. You can't go. And so Cinderella goes to the tree and she cries, and the birds will bring her this beautiful dress, and she'll go to the ball. Well, the prince chooses her to dance with. He refuses to dance with anyone else. And it's a wonderful story until the end, when he wants to follow her home. As we all know, that couldn't happen, because she wasn't supposed to be there. So she runs away from him, and she hides in a chicken coop. Well, he's asking around to see who the woman is. And of course, Cinderella is the only one in the kingdom that's gone. So her father comes and he says, could it be Cinderella? And so he tries to cut down the chicken coop, tries to just smash it to pieces, pretty much trying to kill her. But she gets out of the chicken coop and she gets home, and when they arrive home, she's laying in a pile of ashes like she always is. The second night comes around, she goes to the tree, and she sits underneath it and she cries. Well, the birds bring her a more beautiful dress than before. So, she goes to the ball, the prince only dances with her. She goes to leave, the prince tries to follow her. She climbs the tree. Her dad tries to cut the tree down. This is a very tall tree. She could die. But she got out, she got home, and she was safe. The last night, the birds brought her the most beautiful dress she'd ever seen. And when she got to the ball, he only danced with her. And as she was leaving, he tried to follow her home again. Well, he had thought ahead this time. He had put stuff on the walkway out of the palace so that she would get stuck. She was running down, and her shoe fell off, as it does in the Disney one. But her shoe is made of gold, it's not glass. So she's running down the thing, and her shoe comes off, and she keeps running. She gets home after hiding in a bush and having people come look for her in a bush. She gets home, and she's wondering what will happen with this shoe. The prince finds the shoe and takes it to her house, as they do in the Disney movie. But the stepsisters don't just not fit into the shoe. They cut off pieces of their feet. One will cut off their heel, and the other will cut off their toe. So the shoe is running over with blood. I don't see how he didn't notice this. But the first one will cut off her toe and get on the horse, and he's like, oh, I found my bride. And they drive by on their horse. And the birds start singing, saying, you have the wrong girl. Look at her shoe. And so then he looks at her shoe, and he takes her back. And he's like, I have the wrong girl. So then the other stepsister comes and cuts off her heel. She fits in the shoe, and he's so excited again. For some reason, he doesn't think to look at the shoe. I don't know why. But then he thinks he's found his girl. So he runs away again with her on the horse, and they go by the birds, and they start singing again. You have the wrong girl. Look at her shoe. Be a little smarter next time. Look at the shoe. And so he takes her back and asks, are there any other girls in the house? And they're like, oh, well, there's Cinderella, but she didn't go. She cooked me. He's like, bring her to me. So they wash her up, and they bring her to him, and obviously it fits perfectly. And they run by on their horse, and the birds are singing, you have the right girl. So that's obviously a little different than the Disney version, because they're not going to put that you cut your heel and your toe off to fit in a shoe, because that's a little bit gruesome for some children. And so on their wedding day, she invites her evil stepmother and the two stepsisters, kind of as a way to say, I win. I'm marrying a prince. And so the stepsisters decide that they're going to walk down the aisle with her, one on each side. And as they're walking down, there are birds. They come down and peck out their eyes. They only one eye on the way down. And on the way back, they switch sides. The birds peck out the other eye. So, as I've said, Disney lies, and happily ever after is not what you think. So next time you think that, everything is perfect, you might want to look a little farther into it, because it might not be.